Who is the president of Nigeria? Is it Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu? Or is it Nyesom Wike? Because it's looking as if anything Wike wants, that's what Tinubu does.
My people, hey, now true then say wonder shall never end you. I beg you, my people, I won't ask you now something. They fight for Port Harcourt where we don't know. Abi, what they happen for there? Because I don't understand now. How this man, chai. How this our man, this our first man for Nigeria. I go come take declare state of emergency for the states. Where we say, no be say then they fight. No be say what day. You declare state of emergency because of one person. Because of wike. My people, she una don't say and say there is fire on the mountain. It can't say I don't understand you, my people. Even though if this man wants to suspend person, I beg you, nobody two of them is supposed to suspend. He suspend Fubara. May Wike to follow him. This man not doing like that too. Shall this one not be juju like this? Shall this one not be juju like this? Which kind of a human being these people be? This our government. When we say they just believe say they can do anyhow and go scot free. They even say, they under our constitution say a president should remove a sitting governor. How come wait this man did one? Because of Wike. No be say the citizens of the state that they complain. Or they say somebody they threaten their lives. Or what they happen for there. All because of waiting. Because of 2027. Where we say God don't know say no matter how una play una game, Emma Luleni una no go ever win. Una no go ever win. So can't even crown everything finish. You can't put a military personnel. Yeah, my people. Shall not be democracy we did again for Nigeria. I be eager with you and understand. This man na baba hero. What when they pay me be say no be people go vote for this man, no be then they suffer this thing. Now all of us see. Now all of us because we don't see this thing where they happen. We don't see them. Even though blind person don't see this thing where they happen, deaf person know say this kind of thing go happen if this man rule Nigeria. See now, nothing they work for Nigeria again. Nothing. Things where they breathe before, now they know they breathe again. Things where they see before, now they know they see again. Everywhere scatter. Everywhere jaga, hunger in the land. We can they disturb the peace of Nigerians. Still yet, the person where we believe say is the father of the country, he no fit to do anything. Rather, he dey carry us go where we no know. My people, now
Senior Advocate of Nigeria, did you see this coming? Based on the events that have led to this, and which part of the Nigerian Constitution empowers the president to declare a state of emergency on the one hand and to remove the governor on the other hand?
Well, thank you, Ngozi. It's always a pleasure being here. I wouldn't say that we didn't see it coming, because both parties went back to the trenches. Nobody was ready to give an inch. The governor was not ready to give an inch. The House of Assembly was not ready to give an inch. And even when you hear what some of the leaders were saying, you know that nobody was ready to compromise. Yes. So I think the president did the only thing that he ought to have done. But if you ask me, the president should have declared a state of emergency. Because it's not beyond him to call Amwehule, Fubara and Wike into one room and say, please go and sort this thing out. My friend do this, my friend do that, my friend do that. And all this question of state of emergency wouldn't have arisen. Because state of emergency is an aberration. It is provided for by the Constitution, but it's still unconstitutional. Because in the first place, it suspends democratic structures that make it possible for you to participate in governance. The moment you remove the assembly, you move into a dictatorship. And now we have returned to military rule. Iboke Eta was, yes, a boss. He was a military chief of naval staff or something. So, and that's where we are. It was we saw it coming because the parties wouldn't.
But clearly, I need you to state, for us, this section 305 and paragraph 5, which the president relied on. The question I asked you earlier, this section, does it clearly state that the president can remove the governor in the event of a state of emergency being declared?
Yes. The governor, once a state of emergency is declared, the rule of law gives way. It now becomes a rule of what pleases the president. And one of them is he has the ability to remove the governor, suspend the National Assembly for 6 months. Yes, he has that. But then it does not take effect unless the 2 National Assembly houses approve it. It is not at the whims of the president. When he does that, he has to submit it to the it has to be published in the Gazette, then it must be submitted to the Senate and the House of Reps for them to pass it within 2 days when they're in session, within 10 days when they're not in session.
Yeah, right. Let's bring in Rise News analyst Mahmoud Jega into this conversation. I guess I will also ask you, did you see this coming? We've been discussing Rivers for quite a bit. And even in his response, the senior advocate of Nigeria here had mentioned an employee of the president, Minister Wike of the FCT. When you listen to the president speak today, what did you make of his language, calling the governor a despot? And also people have raised questions about his employee, the minister of the FCT, missing in that entire speech. What did you make of that?
Okay, thank you very much. I was listening to what the son said. I'm not a lawyer and he is a whole son. But if we recall the events of the last 20 years, I beg to disagree with what he said. And let me cite the instance of what happened in 2007 when Atiku Abubakar, who was the then vice president, defected from PDP to AC, and the Obasanjo presidency declared the vice presidency as vacant. And Atiku Abubakar went to court, and the Supreme Court delivered a judgment, I think, in 2008, when the Atinua had even elapsed. And what the Supreme Court stated is that an executive officer, such as president, vice president, governor, or deputy governor, can only lose his position before the expiration of his tenure in one of 4 ways expressly stated in the Constitution, which are resignation, impeachment, incapacitation, and death. And the Supreme Court said that you cannot add to the Constitution anything that it did not expressly state. So whether defection to another party, and similarly, declaration of state of emergency was not mentioned as one of the conditions in the Constitution in which an executive officer can lose his position. I therefore hope that the president was well advised by the Attorney General, because this matter is likely to very soon go back to the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court is consistent with its pronunciation in 2008, it is likely to declare that the president has no power to remove a governor or deputy governor and state assembly. And beyond that, in 2013, when President Jonathan wanted to declare a state of emergency in 3 northeastern states of Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa because of the Boko Haram problem, he called a meeting of legislative leaders and told them that he's going to declare this state of emergency and he was going to remove the 3 governors. The Speaker of the House of Representatives at the time, Amin Waziri Tambuwal, who is a lawyer, stated clearly that no, Mr. President, based on this ruling of the Supreme
Court, if to say them no, they for just leave this girl where talk say Tinubu na terrible president.
You have no power to remove the governors and state assemblies of those states. President Obasanjo did it in Plateau in 2004, but it was because Governor Darie did not go to court. So that was how that matter was led to lie. And President Jonathan accepted that advice, and he declared a state of emergency in the 3 northeastern states in 2013, but he did not remove their democratic structures. Instead, the security agencies, military and others came into the states in huge numbers and aided the civilian authority in trying to combat Boko Haram. That is why I am suspecting the legality of the declaration today. But as I said, I am not a lawyer,
right.
And very soon we'll hear.
Senior Advocate of Nigeria, I'm sure you want to respond to the point he made there. And in the same breath, I'd like you to respond to this. Nigeria actually ratified the Syracuse principles that any emergency declaration must be in good faith. Would you say that this declaration really is in good faith? Are there other underlying factors that could have played out? Because when you listen to the president, just like Adesua said, it looked like a one-sided chastisement, if you like, where the president acknowledged there are 2 parties involved in the crisis in Rivers State, or their parties involved. But he mentioned the governor and never said anything about the other parties.
Well, you see, I will speak here like a lawyer.
Yes, please.
I will leave the politicians to talk their politics.
Great.
And there are things. You can tell somebody, a blind man, that there's no oil. You cannot tell a blind man there's no salt in his soup. Once he puts it in his mouth, you will know whether there's. So I won't go further than that. But like it has been said, when you say that this person did this, he was supposed to do this, he refused to do this, and the impression he creates is very, very wrong, in my opinion. And I think the president should have been more presidential. Whoever wrote that speech did not do the president any favors at all, because the impression is the person that usually wins has won again. You know,
Mahmoud Jega raised a fundamental question, which is one of my questions.
Yes.
We've seen past presidents declare state of emergencies differently. In the case of President Olusegun Obasanjo, he removed the governors. In the case of President Jonathan in 2013, right before the election, he left the governors in charge, as well as the administrators that came to help. So given this inconsistency, does it not suggest that there's a lack of clarity when it comes to constitutional guidelines of declaring state of emergency in the country? And in other words, should the courts not provide a definitive interpretation of that section 305?
Yes, you see, when we interpret provisions of the Constitution and any statute, we are always looking for the intendment of the legislature. The legislature expect or envision a situation where there will be two governors in a state if you declare a state of emergency. Because a state of emergency is a suspension of democracy. And don't forget that Section 305 2D or so says that person that will be running the state will not make any new laws. But if he can make regulations which must be approved by the FEC. If you have democratic structures, if you have the governor in place, will that person be ruling over the governor too? Which person, who is now the boss, so to say, whose voice reigns, who is said to be in charge? You can't have two governors. Yeah. So the moment you declare a state of emergency and suspend democratic structures, everything about that is why the judiciary was not touched. The judiciary is not part of your democracy. We have our own, the way we do our things. I can tell you who will be our next CJ.
Going to burn down River State. Yes. USA.
We don't need to go and do election on that.
Okay, let me bring in Mahmoud Jega before we wrap this. What do you think the likely implications are? This state of emergency, does it even solve the problem of the crisis in River State? Malam Jega, does it solve the problem? And, some are saying it has to do with 2027. Are you seeing that playing out?
I don't know whether it has to do with 2030 or anything, but the problem at hand, first of all, is that the legality of the declaration and in particular the suspension of the democratic structures has to be clarified. And what I suspect could happen is that some PDP-controlled states are likely to go to the Supreme Court very quickly, because a matter between state governments and federal governments goes straight to the Supreme Court and test the legality of the declaration. And if the Supreme Court is consistent with its 2018 judgment, then it is likely to strike down that part of the declaration which removes constitutional structures. That is what I suspect will happen. As to whether this will solve the problem, I don't think so. You see, as was pointed out, I thought the president could have, just like he enumerated the misdeeds of the governor, should have also said a few things about the minister of the FCT, who is actually very, very central to the creation and perpetuation of this problem. Is it normal in law or in politics that somebody as godfather should sit down in Abuja and begin factionalizing the assembly and causing all kinds of problems in a state that he once governed? And unless something is done about that, then the problem will never be solved, maybe before 2027, the way I see it.
Quite unfortunate. Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Obamadu Abuchi, and Arise News analyst Mahmoud Jega.
Very quickly.
In 20 seconds if you can.
Yes, you see, we say the Supreme Court said you cannot, that is in Abubakar and the Federal Republic. Well, I agree, but that is ordinarily. Ordinarily, nobody has, the only way you lose your seat is death, resignation, incapacity, or whatsoever. There are four instances, ordinarily. But ordinary times do not exist in state of emergency.
Right. Okay. Thank you both for being on the news tonight. We do appreciate your time. Moving on.
Yes.
The administrator appointed for River State, retired Vice Admiral Ibok Ete Ekwa Ibas, was the 22nd Chief of Naval Staff of the Nigerian Navy, who served from 2015 to 2021. 64-year-old Ibas from Cross River State, South Nigeria, enlisted into the Nigerian Defense Academy in 1979 and was commissioned sub-lieutenant in 1983. Ibas attended several military courses at home and abroad. He has served as Naval Provost Marshal, Chief Staff Officer of the Naval Headquarters Chief of Administration, and later as the Navy Secretary, while Ibas was the Flag Officer commanding Western Naval Command from January 2013 to January of 2014, Chief of Logistics in February of 2014, and then the GMD CEO of Nigerian Navy Holdings Limited. In December of the same year, he was appointed the 22nd Chief of the Naval Staff on 13 July of 2015.